This is Pivot Perspectives with Chris O'Byrne, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on their road to success, and get exclusive access on how to implement their success into your life and business. Pivot Perspectives is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Chris O'Byrne.
Hey, are you looking to scale your business from 5 figures to 6 figures or 6 figures to 7 figures? If you are, I have the perfect thing for you. What I want you to do today is I want you to go download a book. This book is going to take you through my 3-pillar system. It's 100% free. All you have to do is go to growfast.cash. I say again, go to growfast.cash, and you're going to be able to download my free international best-selling book, which is called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. You can take that book. It's going to help you scale your business to the next level. Again, go download it. Be good, be brief, be gone. Growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. Enjoy.
Sherry Winn, welcome again to the show.
Thanks, Chris. So excited to be here again to just have in-depth conversation and to help people with their belief systems, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Our last conversation, we talked a lot about, more basics of what you do. We talked about your book. We talked a lot about your story. And so today we're going to dig into something a lot more specific and I think very helpful for people. So you are a 2-time Olympian, national championship basketball coach, award-winning speaker and author. And so you have clearly learned a thing or two about overcoming adversity and challenges. What I'd like to start with is, what's one of the biggest challenges that you have ever faced, and how did you overcome it?
Wow, that's an easy one. You'd think it'd be hard because there's so many of them. But at age 35, I developed chronic pain. So I couldn't sit, stand, or walk without pain. So here I was, before that time, everything about my life was about the physical. So I loved to run, jump, play, lift weight. I mean, I was one of those athletes who loved practice. I was one of the people who loved to move. And so all of a sudden, boom, like it just almost happened overnight that this chronic pain set in. And so it was too hard for me to walk through a grocery store to get groceries. It was too hard to sit in a movie theater because I couldn't sit that long without pain. So the only place I got relief was when I went, if I could lay down, I was better. But it really just changed the entire course of my life and just overnight.
So how did you deal with that in the moment? Like when you were first dealing with it, was there a lot of, anger and grief and all those things?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, anger is my survival tool, right? So we all have a survival tool. Like we all have something that we learn to do when things were hard on us. And so mine was anger. I'd go to anger. So that's the first thing I went to was anger. And then, after anger is probably a lot of grief, more anger, more grief, more anger, more grief. I don't think I got beyond anger and grief for a long time. So it was very hard. I mean, it was extremely hard to go from a person who, like I said, loved to do all those things. I weight trained, I was biking, I was doing some rock climbing, I was doing, still running, I was hiking, backpacking, to nothing. Like it was like to that. And the intensity on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest number, I was at a 10, like 8, 9, and 10 every day. So yeah, anger was my go-to emotion. And so that was really where I was living in this pain, was just the emotional piece was anger and grief. A lot more anger than grief though.
So do you still deal with a lot of chronic pain?
No, I mean, I have a little bit of pain left, but it's not what I would consider chronic anymore. It's just kind of on a scale from, I was living at 8, 9, and 10. I'd say now it's a 2, a 1, sometimes get up to 4 or 5, but it's just barely noticeable, right? And so that was like when you look back on your life and you go, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. That's what I would say about this experience. So the worst thing obviously was it changed the course of my life. I mean, it changed the way that I live my life, definitely. The best thing was it was the opportunity for me to learn so much about who I was and give me new tools to deal with, our life challenges that we're all going to have. So it was worse than the best. And so when I look back, I'm like, man, I'm so grateful that I had this experience because it taught me kindness and humility and unconditional love for self. No, I'll say I'm still working on that one. But unconditional, working on unconditional love, getting closer to that, loving other people, accepting other people, learning about my limiting belief systems. I mean, there's so much to gain out of that experience. And so when I look back at it, I'm like, man, I'm so grateful because it was the absolute experience that altered, and altered my anger, like switched that anger out, altered my fear-based thing that I was doing, altered my guilt-based life I was living, and switched it more to love.
So what were some of the tools you used to get out of that, to get
Mm-hmm.
away from the anger and fear?
Well, first of all, I went to 17 different medical professionals, right? And so we did every test known to mankind, and they're like, we don't know what it is. I mean, you'd have to wait like 3 months to get to these professional people, and then you'd go in, they'd do some tests, and I go, I don't know. I go, well, all right, so where should I go next? Well, I don't know. I mean, that was kind of the experience I had. And so after the last guy who said, look, we're going to get a group of medical professionals together and we're going to look at all of these things and we're going to come up with a game plan. I'm like, yay. And so I came back 2 weeks later and he goes, okay, here's your game plan. We're going to put you into pain management system. You're going to learn how to manage your pain. I go, dude, that's not the game plan because I don't want the pain. Right. And so almost every doctor I went to wanted to give me pain pills. Like that was their answer. Here's some pain pills. And I'm like, well, this solved the problem. No, it'll help you cope better. I go, I don't want I don't want any of the side effects. Like read me the side effects, and there'd be so many side effects. I'm like, I don't want any of those side effects. And I don't want something that masks what's going on. I want to get rid of it. And there didn't seem to be anybody who had the answer. Right. So after the last doctor who wanted me to manage pain, I go, you know what? I'm just going to go somewhere else. Like I'm going to figure this out. I know there's some place in this world and somebody who has the answers. And so I went to alternative medicine. So I just jumped out of Western medicine and went to alternative medicine. And I didn't come to, answers really quickly. I mean, I went through different things there, but finally came to this system and they said, it's body, mind, and spirit. I'm like, well, that's crap. But it wasn't because it was really about working through. There was physical pain, and that physical pain also had an emotional pain attached to it, which also had a spiritual pain attached to it. And so it took me a long time for me to really grasp that and to understand it and to believe in it and to grow from it. Luckily, the therapists were very patient, and luckily I'm very persistent. So it took years. It was literally years of, I saw some immediate results of going there, like within, I did like 10 hours of work with them and I was immediately better. And I was like, whoa, that's wow. Because after everything I'd done. And so I kept going back. And the problem was they'd say, okay, we need to deal with these emotions. And I'd be like, no, I'm not, no, not going to talk about any of these emotions. And so that's why it took so long is that I wouldn't open up emotionally to them.
So is there, I guess, a process that can be applied? Like you learned a process and you learned and you were probably able to kind of distill, all right, what did I do that actually worked? Throw away everything else. Did you then develop a process that you could use to apply to really any other adversity or challenge?
Well, I think that becomes about your belief systems, right? And so we have certain thought habits that lead to belief systems, and belief systems lead to our reality. Okay. So when we examine our thought habits and we're willing to change them into better belief systems, then it's easier to get through different challenges that come our way. Because the truth is, look, we're all going to experience challenges. Nobody gets to escape being a human. because the process of being human is these challenges that come our way. So I have a lot of different things that I learned over the year. One of them is the formula E plus R equals O. So that means the event plus your response to the event equals your outcome. So the event itself is neutral, right? The event has no emotion. We apply the emotion. So that's our response, the emotion that we apply to the event. So whatever emotion we choose to apply to the event equals our outcome. Now, when I say this, people are like, but we need to feel grief or we need to, sure, like that's fine. Feel those things because I think it's warranted. If you go through something that's really challenging, yes, we need to feel some of those. How long do you stay in it? It's going to equal to your outcome, right? So do you want to stay mad and angry all your life? Do you want to stay bitter all your life? Do you want to stay in frustration all your life? Do you want to stay in overwhelm all your life? That's your choice. Or you can choose to think of something like, one of my belief systems is this, that all things happen to us for our own highest good, right? So look, if you really believe that, if you really believe that this event could lead you to something greater, for example, my chronic pain thing led me to incredible changes in my world, in my life. So if I believed at the outset, like this was done for me rather than to me, then it helps you to get through some of those. So that's one of the skill sets I learned is like, look, you have to find a belief system that's going to make you feel better. And if your belief system makes you feel worse, you're not going to get anywhere. That's just truth, right? You're not going to get anywhere.
So it sounds like most of the chronic pain wasn't actually physical. I thought most of it was mental and emotional, because most of the work you did was mental and emotional.
Hmm.
So, how does someone go about developing inner stability and strength?
Yeah, great question. I think that comes back to your belief system again, right? So you got to recognize it's really about self-awareness and developing the self-awareness. It's about recognizing the thoughts that you have. And are those thoughts leading to a positive outcome or are they leading to a negative outcome? And are our thoughts thinking us or are we thinking our thoughts? Or are our emotions running us or are we running our emotions? I mean, which one is happening? And most people let their thoughts think them. They don't know. Most people let their emotions run them. They don't know. Right. And so it begins with this really deep awareness of. So I'll give you an example. This is so funny. I just think this is how our minds work is just incredible. So this past weekend I was out, a really beautiful place called Bighorn Canyon, absolutely gorgeous. And I'm just in this wonderful place of just, gratitude and appreciation and just going, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky. I'm so blessed. I could, the smells of the pine trees, the feeling of the gentle wind, the views of this incredible canyon with the water down below and the trees and just overwhelming. And then right out of nowhere, go like, what if you got bit by a rattlesnake? Then you'd probably die out here, right? You'd have no chance to get back to. Well, okay, why? Like, why? Like, what is this thought doing? And so most people let that thought come in, right? And then they let the thought, like the whole story go. Like, oh my gosh, I'd be out here, and then they couldn't get me to. How would they get me to to somebody's where they could do something about the snake back? How long would I have to live before I died? How much pain would I have? And like we create this whole story along with this kind of thought that comes in. And so, but I recognize the thought and I go, well, that's really interesting. Like that I would have all this beautiful emotion and all the great things that are happening that I'm going to throw in, this story. And so instead of letting the story play, I just go, well, that's an interesting story. Like that's interesting. It's not real. It's not even true. It's just a story I'm going to make up and I don't want it. So goodbye. Like, it's just like, I don't let the story play out. Right. I recognize that negativity coming in. And then I throw out the story before it really gets any kind of basis. And what I'm saying is that most people don't do that. They let a story come in and they build the story on this, something that's not even happened, right? But they create the story around that and they create the fear around that. They create the emotion around that and they let that take them away. And so, when we recognize the things that we do to ourselves, because certainly nobody else was doing that to me. I did that to me. Nobody else was in my brain. And so when we recognize the power we truly have, and then we have the power to switch those thoughts, then things can change. The struggle for most people is they've been letting their thoughts and emotions run them for so long they don't even know they have any power to change them.
Mm. They feel stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm sure that you've noticed that these thoughts always come in. They're always arising up out of seemingly nowhere, and then we deal with it or we don't. We let it go or we dwell on it. Like you say, most people feel like they're stuck with that. That's, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. That's what my thought is. That's what's going on, and
Yeah.
it's real, and because it feels real. But
Mm-hmm.
have you ever found a way to slow that process of letting those thoughts come up?
So there's a couple of things. I mean, one is when I find myself stuck on some event that's happened that is about somebody else did something to me, right? And I always say did something to me because that's how we think in the victim mentality. I do a process called Ho'oponopono, right? So this is an Hawaiian prayer called Ho'oponopono, and so it's a prayer of forgiveness. And what I do is I just bring this thing up, and I just start playing with the process. It's a four part process. And so the process is I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. That's the 4-part process. Now, people will say, well, who do you say it to? Well, you can say it to a higher power, you can say it to yourself, you can say it, like to the other person, not in front of them, but just thinking of the other person, saying it to them. So I had a neighbor who's not been the kindest of individuals and brought up a frivolous lawsuit because it was about an easement. He had an easement across our property, which is fine. And we put up a fence, our legal right. Put up gates, again, our legal right, because we get to keep his animals off our property. In fact, that's how it says, like the law in Montana is if you want somebody's animals off your property, you fence them out. So he came up and said I had to take down the gate. And I said, no, I do not have to take down the gate. I said, you have access to your property. I said, but look, here, you can put in any gate you want. You can put in any gate you want to. Automated gate, I don't care. Any gate you want, just put it up. We're fine with that. Or you can put in a cattle guard, also fine with that. I'm suing you. So here we go, go through this lengthy process where he's really unkind, nasty every day, really trying to be nasty and mean every day. And so it ends up costing about $14,000 to resolve this, right? And so every time I go up on these roads, I'd go, oh, that guy, he's a son of a gun. And I can't believe he did this to me. And look, here's me bringing up a story, right? Happened years ago, but I'm going to bring it up every single time. And I'm going to get mad every single time. I'm like, well, this is ridiculous. Like, this is ridiculous that I'm doing this to myself because he doesn't hear it. He doesn't know I'm doing it. So who's feeling the emotions? Me. So I started doing the Ho'oponopono. So when that thought would come in, I'd go, I'm sorry that I'm still thinking this thought. Please forgive me for keep reliving this thing this long past. Thank you for the recognition I'm doing this to myself and I love you. Or then I would do it some other way, like, I'm sorry that I don't even understand who this guy is. Please forgive me for not understanding his story and why he is the way he is. Thank you for letting me have the empathy of understanding somebody else. And I love you. Right. So I would just do that in different ways. And so every time that pops up, boom, I go back the same thing. And pretty soon it just like, as soon as I say it, it dissipates. Right. So it's gone. I don't think about it. Next time I get back on the 4-wheeler, get back on the road, it might come up again. I'm like, oh no, we're not going to do this. And I go back into Ho'oponopono and it just dissipates it. So it's my willingness over time and to say it in many different ways, right? To say it in many, many different ways and to allow that to finally just settle into nothing, right? I'm not going to say it settles into nothing at the first point. It's your due diligence over time to allow it to So Ho'oponopono is one of the things that I do. There's also Byron Katie, if you've read her book called The Works, Byron Katie. I use a lot of Byron Katie stuff. And the first thing that Byron Katie says, when you think about something, is it true? Yeah. Right. And so, we make up stories. Let's go back to the stories. We're good at making up stories. And so we make up a story about what somebody did to us, not knowing what their real motives were. We just create a story around it. Like that person cut me off and I can't believe they do that on purpose. They almost caused me, we don't know what's going on with that person. Right. So is it true that I know for a fact that that person did, cut me off on purpose on the highway? No. Like that's the first thing, right? If you can just get to that and just go, no, oh, okay. It's just not even true. It's just a story. Like that first part of just doing that is really remarkable. that if you can just get to the number one out of Byron Katie's 4 steps, a lot of times you ask yourself it's true, then you will immediately know, no, it's just a story I'm making up. Well, then, okay, then I can release it because it's just a story. I don't even know, it's just a story. So, I mean, her steps were, is it true? Do you know 100% that's absolutely true? Because a lot of times we'll go, yep, it's true. Well, do you know 100%? Like, can I read your mind, Chris? Of course I cannot read your mind. Good. So therefore, if I don't know your true motives, I'm creating a story up that's based on my perceptions and not yours, right? How do I feel? Number 3 is like, how do I feel when I make that statement? Like, what does it cause me to feel? Well, anger, I'm mad, pissed off. Okay. How do I feel without this story? What changes when I let go of the story? Oh, I feel a lot different. So do you want to stay in the story or not? Again, your choice. And so those are just a couple of the things that I use it's consistency over time. It's not something that's going to happen immediately, but it's consistency over time of doing these kind of things that help somebody shift out of their old stories, their old belief systems into new thought habits and new belief systems, which then allows you to have and live a happier life.
I came across Byron Katie's the work and her others years ago, and yeah, it made a huge difference. But boy, did I fight it! I stuck with it, but boy, did I fight it! Like,
Sure.
that guy's a jerk. Well, are you 100% sure? You're darn right I am.
Right. And we do that to ourselves. And it
Yeah.
makes a difference when we recognize that most of the things we're telling ourselves is just a story that has no basis, right? Well, the basis is an experience we had in our life somewhere that we're now linking the new experience with an old experience. And we're creating that story from an old story, and we're linking those together and not knowing, right? And so it's just that consistency of recognizing, look, I really don't know what you're thinking, Chris. I don't know why you're doing it. I don't have any idea around that, but I can create a story around it. And then in the story, the interesting thing, when we tell a story, it's always about us being right and them being wrong.
Looking to grow your business beyond 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures plus? What I want you to do is go download this book. The title is called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. It will help you grow your business past 5, 6, and 7 figure. Go download the book today, growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash, and download the book for absolutely free.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually one of the things I'll do sometimes is I'll think, all right, tell yourself a different story. Just try out a different story. And even if you make it up, like,
Mhm.
well, they've gone through all these hardships and these awful things happened.
Mhm.
And that's actually my grandmother, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, wow, things really shift. But
Mhm.
you're right, that consistency, being persistent in just keep at it. Like,
Yep.
you're going to screw up over and over
Yep.
forever.
Yep.
So,
Well, there's a book that I read and it just talked about, I think the book was Life in the Transitions, Making Changes at Any Age by Bruce Feely. I think that's the book. And what he said is through his research, he said, look, over our lifetimes, we're going to have 48 life disruptions, 48 things that cause us to have like a disruption in our life. For me, where let's say it's from 3 to 6 months, like something that's significant, right? Something that maybe you had long COVID, or maybe you had, your child's being bullied at school, or whatever it is, like this consistent over time. 48 of those, 48, right, in lifetime. Now think about that. Like depending on how long you live, that's one every like 12 to 16 months.
I've used my quota up, by the way.
Yeah, you're done. Right? And then beyond that, we're all going to have 3 to 5 life quakes. So what's a life quake? A life quake is a life disruption on steroids. So the life quake is a lifelong dream that blows up in your face. It's a friend or loved one that betrays you in such a way that seems unforgivable, or it's the injury or illness that changes your life forever. We're going to have 3 to 5 of those. So it's the human experience, right? So you can either be mad all your life because of the challenges that are going on, or you can choose to have a different belief system around those challenges because you're not going to be able to live in a bubble and not have the challenges. Those are going to happen to you on a consistent basis. So the choice is like understanding this is the human experience. So what tools can I put in my tool chest so that I can have a different experience, right? That I don't let these things own me for so long. Like I said before, when I had the chronic pain, I was probably mad. I mean, like deeply angry for 3 years or
Ooh,
so.
ouch.
4 years. I don't know. It was really long.
Oh,
And so, it was really funny because I didn't even know how angry I was because up to that time, I didn't know that besides being angry at my pain, that I was angry at a lot of other things. Like I didn't know that that was my survival mechanism. I didn't know that, I lived in anger almost all the time. I didn't know those things about myself. I mean, other people might have known. I did not know. And so
oh yeah.
I was sitting in this, this is called integrated manual therapy. And I was sitting on this table and they were doing their work with me. And so the therapist says, look, I'm going to leave you for a few minutes and I'll come back. I want you to think about how angry you are. Right. So I'm like, this is my response. This is literally what I did. I'm not angry. That's exactly how I responded to that. And I listened to myself and I go, oh my gosh. Like, oh my, listen to that response. I'm yelling it like angrily. And I was saying, I'm not angry. And I'm like, what? So that was a huge moment of recognizing how much anger do I have. And what I loved about these people is they would send me homework, which is now what I do to my clients, by the way. And I don't call it homework. I call it winning success steps. And so one of the ways that I'm different from a lot of coaches is that I send these winning success steps, which are self-reflection steps to help people get deeper answers so they can come to their own ahas. Because when they do that, magic happens. And so they sent me this thing that said like, write down 25 ways you use your anger to get what you want. And I'm like, there's no way I could come up with 25 ways that I use my anger to get, that's just ridiculous. And they're like, don't come back until you get all these, right? And there was other questions, but that's what I remember. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I don't do that. And then I started writing things down. I'm like, oh, wow. Like I am a manipulator. I use my get what this is awful. I was like, I can remember that feeling of like, oh my gosh, like how many ways do I use this and how big of a manipulator that I was, to get what I wanted through my anger. And of course that was passed down to me. Like that came through me legitimately through my mother and her mother and, who knows her mother and back for, ancestry, but generationally. And so it was that recognition, right? I mean, we can't get to somewhere new if we don't examine who we are. And there's a great saying that I love to pass on to my clients, which is this: you can't get what you want if you still are who you are. You have to change who you are to get what you want. Like you literally have to change who you are if you want a different experience in life. If you're not willing to do that, you're going to keep living the same experience.
You have helped a lot of people now along the way. Are there any stories you can share with me?
Man, there's so many people that I just see change in so many different ways, which is beautiful, right? When I'm watching people change. I had a woman who came to me and she was all about like, she just took things personal all the time. And she felt like that people did things to her and she was mad and angry and upset and she had zero boundaries in her life. And she felt like people took over her house when she didn't want to take over her house and they came and demanded stuff from her. She just gave it away and she got mad at them. She felt like in her work that she wasn't, respected or seen for value. And she was just miserable, like miserable in all aspects, miserable in her relationship at home, miserable with her relationship with her family, her extended family. And definitely mad at in our office place. And so when we worked together, we worked about, luckily it was about 8 months, and she had incredible shifts. She quit taking things personal. She found a deeper relationship at home. She stopped letting people in her family abuse her. Like she stopped saying, they just called and say, we want to use your house. And she'd go, okay, come over. And then she'd be mad about it. She had to clean. She gave the money to run the party. She cleaned up. She start putting boundaries together. So, and, people started respecting her for her boundaries. They didn't hate her like she thought that they were going to hate her. At work, she had a new work experience. She was going to quit work. And then she started loving her work again and started having profound impact on the people that she was leading. So like something like that, like it impacted so many different ways at the level of, and really it's coming into that self-love that most of us don't have, right? Like if you ask somebody, do you have unconditional self-love? They're like, yeah, of course I do, of course. But I've found very few people that actually have that or recognize the places that they don't love themselves. And learning to not take it personal, because it's never about you. It's always about the other person. I mean, everybody's story they try to put on you every single time somebody's talking to you, it comes from their own personal history. It's not about you. And people think it is about me. No, as a matter of fact, not about you. Sorry. It's about that person's experience. And we know now they've had how many life disruptions and how many life quakes. Now we know that, right? Now we know that. We can understand that, man, they've got a lot of stuff they've had to come through to get to where they are. So, I mean, that's just one of them. There's so many that has impacted people. And it could be, for me, it's about happiness. And happiness could be they got more money, or they got a different job, or they got, found a new partner, or whatever that level of success is to them. It always equals happiness.
I think, and I say this because I know that I've done it myself, that a lot of people kind of grab onto those stories. Like part of us knows it's not about us, it's about them,
Mm-hmm.
but we also use that to our advantage
Mm-hmm.
as an excuse or a justification for
Mm-hmm.
our own screwed up behaviors.
Well, yeah, when you're justifying or rationalizing your behavior, you got to stop there and start saying,
Yeah.
wait a second. Why do I need to justify my behavior? Why do I need to rationalize my behavior? What's that about? Like, that's part of it. When you get defensive, what's my need to get defensive? Why do I need to get defensive? What is this about? Like, and so that's like, anytime I rationalize and justify, get defensive, I'm like, okay, stop. This is about me. So what is my need to do this? And the more that we recognize and the more that we're willing to look at ourselves, and with curiosity, because what happens when people start really viewing themselves, just as they go into judgment, right? Judgment's not your friend. Judging yourself is not your friend. Judging yourself is harmful. It puts you into guilt. It puts you into shame, right? And those are two of the lowest vibrations that you can offer up to the world. So we have to learn to look at ourselves with like curiosity rather than judgment. And so, and curiosity is just like, oh, that's interesting I said that, or that it's interesting I feel that way. Why do I feel that way? And it's not like judging, because look, people do that. Like, it's the human experience. We're just being human. We're just being human. But if we can look at ourselves with curiosity and we go, I was defensive, or I'm trying to rationalize this, and let me look back. Why would I do that? Why would I feel like I needed to do that? And then we resolve those issues within us. Guess what? We're less and less that way. We're less that way. We don't have the need to do that anymore. But if we don't take that curious thing, what we do is we judge ourselves for doing it. And this is my favorite. Then we judge ourselves for judging ourselves.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, what a cycle we put ourselves into.
It's
You
horrific.
mentioned boundaries earlier, and
Mhm.
I think that's a bigger issue than most people realize, and probably at the heart of a lot of
Mhm.
our,
Mhm.
our struggles.
Sure.
Do, what do you tell people, or how do you help people learn to not just recognize them, but actually do something about it?
hmm Well, I think the first thing is that we have to get out of that victim mode, right? I mean, so we love to tell the story, and I mean that. Like, we love to tell stories about how somebody else hurt us, or did this to us, or betrayed us. Like, we love to tell a story. So the first thing is recognizing when we go into victim mode. That's the first thing, because as long as we're in victim mode, we're helpless, we're hopeless, we're in pain, and that's our choice. That's truly our choice, right? And I was just working with somebody who had an abusive relationship, and got out of the abusive relationship, and then got into another one, right? And so, and most people go, well, that's stupid. Like, why would they do that? Well, why are you not like, able to have the boundary? What's that about? Well, this is one of the things I take my people through, my clients through a lot, is how is this emotion benefiting you? And they're like, it's not. Oh, yeah, it is. Because if it wasn't benefiting you, you would stop doing it. I mean, that's the first places to recognize, like the anger thing I was talking about with me is when I recognized how I was benefiting from it, and I didn't like what I saw. I mean, I wrote it down and looked at it. I was like, I do not like that about me. That is not something I want to continue doing, right? I don't want to be known as a manipulator and manipulating people's emotions through my anger. I don't want to do that. But when people will say, why, like, let's look at your emotion. How does it benefit you? And when they start recognizing, well, then I can blame other people for my failure. Oh, okay. So you're in this relationship so that you can blame this person for why you're failing. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so when they can get that awareness, it's got to come to some level of awareness, because when you get to that point, you're like, wow, do I really do that to myself? Like, do I really do that to myself? Then you can start making the changes, because you also ask, not only how does it benefit you, but how does it not benefit you? Right. And a lot of times they'll say, well, I'm anxious. I feel stressed all the time. I'm crying all the time. I can't seem to feel good about myself. I stay in bad places because I can't get out. I can't seem to get out of them. There's a lot of drama in my life. Okay. So let's look at these things. I mean, look at your emotional benefits. Which one feels worse to you? Oh my gosh. Like, I don't want to feel all these things anymore. Okay. So now there's an awareness around why they do it. And so usually the awareness is the first moment that people say, okay, now I want to change. Because if they can't come to awareness that they're doing it to themselves, even though they have a willing partner, right? That they can get out of that, then they start willing to look for, what can I do differently? And then how do I do that differently?
It seems like a lot of, I mean, these are all great insights, but it seems like a lot of self-discipline is required to see progress, to get to the other side. How do you help people, or what do you suggest people do to actually develop self-discipline? It seems like it should be easy. You just do more of the thing or force yourself or what, but it isn't always that easy.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think that I think the self discipline has to come from your greater motivation to do something new. Like how people say, well, people will change when they get enough pain. Pain's a great motivator, right? There's only two reasons we change ever. Number one, to avoid pain, and number two is to gain pleasure. That's it. That's the motivators,
Yeah.
right? So is the pain deep enough that you're ready to do something different? And then not only is that necessary, but the other end of necessary is the pleasure going to be great enough. So if
Hmm.
all your focus is on the pain, guess what? You can't get there either. So it's got to be this equal level of, what's the pain like? Do I want to stay there? Am I willing to, what happens if I don't change? Will I keep living this life? Well, what does that look like? Well, it looks like I stay in, these abusive relationships. Is that something you want to do? Well, no. Okay, well, what else happens when you're in an abusive relationship? Well, I don't get to do the things I want to do. Well, what do you not get to do? Well, I don't ever get to go on a vacation. Well, do you want to go on a vacation? Well, I'd love to go on a vacation. What else can you not do? Right? Well, I don't get to buy what I want to buy. I don't get to eat what I want to eat. Is that important to you? Well, yes, it's important to me. Well, what would you like to do? Like, what would you like to do instead? Right. So now we got the pain, and what do you want to do instead? Oh man, I would love to go on vacation. Where do you want to go on vacation? Oh, Greece. What would that look like? What would that feel like? What would that be like? So you have to get those drivers big enough. You probably heard times like, if your why is big enough, right,
Yeah.
then you can change. But people don't have a big enough why. And so to help them reach into what their why is, because if your why is not big enough, you're not going to get into the self-discipline mode, right? I mean, you're just going to have all this, you're going to rationalize, you're going to justify, all those things that you're doing. And to the outside world, to most of your friends, are like, yeah, he really is mean to you, or that was terrible, ugh. Well, that doesn't change you. I mean, to have somebody else agree with you does not create change, right? So it's really to find the drivers of whatever it is. And by the way, I talk about these clients. I mean, it's funny because a lot of them are leaders. A lot of them are in leadership
Hmm.
positions. And so we think they have it, like they're making 500 million, or they're making 300, I'm sorry, they're making 500,000, or they're in a company where they're the CEO of millions. And yet at the end of it, they're still people. So we view that success differently, because we're like, well, they're so successful only to that level, only to that level of financial success. It doesn't mean that the rest of their life is going okay.
So one more question I want to ask, because people are always seeking happiness or what they perceive to be happiness. But how does someone go about even just developing a positive attitude toward
Mm,
life?
mm, yeah. Yeah, that comes from somebody who was born like, with pessimistic family members. And people would call me a pessimist. I go, no, I'm a realist. Um,
Yes. Oh, yes.
yeah, you got that right. Oh, wow. And so, I think that first of all, you have to realize, A, who you really are. I mean, and B, I think you have to realize the importance of the law of attraction, which is you get what you think about most of the time, whether you want it or not. And so if your thoughts are always on the negative and you're living the negative, surprise, 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 right? And so what do? Well, you start doing things like, you create a gratitude journal. None of these are any of these things I'm telling you are my original ideas. This is just ideas from I got from reading hundreds and hundreds of books and getting my own personal coaches and that kind of thing. But you gotta be writing get a gratitude journal every night. Write down what you're grateful for, or every morning, or just go on a rampage of thankfulness. Like I told you for 3 days I was just on this credible just so grateful for everything and how that vibration was feeling within me. Like, because I was so grateful for everything. I thought everything was possible because of the gratitude. I was just like looking, oh my gosh, look how beautiful the sky is. It's just incredible. Look at those clouds moving. Oh, look how fast they're moving. Oh my God. So just look at that water. Look at the cleanness. Just that kind of developing that. You have to develop that, because if you're born a pessimist, I don't mean I was born that way. I was born into a family of
There you
pessimists,
go.
right? So, and changing that habit, that thought habit. So we go back to thought habits, right? But you have to be awareness of that, and you have to create these kind of, this kind of thing that, things that you're grateful for, and seeing that, like turning that around to be grateful for that. I read a book by Joe Vitale, and he was one of the people I'd read early, and I was trying to think about what the title is. It might elude me here, but maybe it's Beyond Limits, or maybe it's one of his other books. But what he said was, look, he goes, I was one of those people. I had nothing. I was at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. And then, I started understanding that gratitude, like you raise your energy levels, and then greater things come to you, because what can come to you is only through your energy. You cannot get to some place if your energy's not there. Like we're vibrational, energetic human beings. And so he said, I didn't have much, but then I started being thankful that I had a pencil, and I was really grateful for the pencil, and I was grateful for the eraser on the pencil, and I was grateful that I could write with a pencil, and I was grateful that I could write good words with a pencil. And, that's where it started. And I think that so oftentimes we're so used to what we don't have, and we focus on that way too much. And so it's, a gratitude journal, go on a rampage of thankfulness, try to go for a minute as if you could go for a whole minute. Those are some of the things that start that. And then I play the what if game, one of my favorite games to play. Again, something I learned from somebody else. But the what if game is a ton of possibilities in front of you without ever answering how you're going to do it. Just letting the possibilities play out. What if I could fly to Greece tomorrow? What if I could buy a first class ticket anywhere I wanted to go in the world at any time? What if I could always fly first class? What if I was in first class and they always served me exactly what I wanted to have and my meals that I wanted to have, even though I'm gluten free, and they always had that on the plane for me. They always had that. What if my feet were totally healthy? Instead of walking a mile, I could walk not 5 miles. What if I could go on long backpacking trips? What if I could feel, my favorite lake ever, Rainbow Lake? What if I could get there again and just sit there beside that and see the beauty of it? You just do that, right? You don't ever stop to say, well, that's not going to happen, or how's that going to happen? You just play out the feeling, which is good feeling possibilities, right? And it raises your vibration. And I play that a lot of times when I'm in the car driving somewhere. I'll just get on this what if game to just raise the possibility of stuff. And people go, well, it never happened. Well, first of all, okay, there we go. Back to the negative. But secondly, you're just trying to feel good. Like the idea of thinking it already brings me into alignment of feeling good. Like I'm already into appreciation of feeling the possibilities. And so what you're really trying to do is just feel good. That's what you're reaching for. And the more that you can feel good, the more that you can reach for better feelings, right? So we have to train ourselves to feel good. I mean, that sounds really ridiculous, but from a pessimist family, it was a long
Yes.
it was a long journey. And so when we focus on those things, we can actually change those things, and we can create a new us.
I think that is a perfect way to wrap up this interview. A very positive note about feeling positive,
Mm-hmm.
and feels like that's a good place for people to start.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we've been told that, oh, you should do a gratitude journal, but then we say yes, and then we don't really think about it. We don't really dive into it. Most
Mm-hmm.
of the time, we don't even do it.
Right.
But the way you explained it makes it feel like, wow, this is, again, a great deal of pleasure to be gained from it and a great deal of pain to be avoided because of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. So when people, ask me, how was your weekend? I'm like, oh man, it was just unbelievably amazing. And people are like, are you just saying that? I'm like, no, like it's really that way. Or what's the day like? Oh man, it's so beautiful outside. It's incredible, right? I mean, and it's because when I look outside, I say, golly, look at that. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy how beautiful it is? Isn't that insane? And so when you start that way, you start feeling that way. I mean, and it becomes authentic. It's authentic. I'm not BSing anybody. It's truly authentic. And that's from the long time of practicing, right?
Mm.
Practicing these vibrations. And anybody can do it. Like if I came from where I came from and the negativity that I held and the anger that I held, and I say anybody can do it, I mean anybody can do it. Like anybody can do it.
Oh, Sherry, thank you so much for this chance to interview twice.
Woo-hoo.
Um, yeah, this is a great interview. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome, Chris. Anytime. I enjoy that your questions are phenomenal. Like you're really good at asking
Well, thank
questions.
you.
And thanks for asking those questions so that I could share some of my knowledge with folks out there.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Hey, we all want to scale our business. Hey, I have the answer for you today to help you do that. If you're looking to scale from 5, 6, even 7 figures and beyond, book called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. I'm going to give it to you for free. All you have to do is type in growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash, and you can download the book for absolutely free. I hope the book helps you this year. Take your business to the next level. Again, go grab the book, growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. I wish you the best and grow, scale, and win.
Thanks for listening to Pivot Perspectives with your host, Chris O'Byrne. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advice on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.
There it is. Magnum. Holy moly.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
Dear